What's up, Ragin Nation? How's it going? This is Alex Yu, and you're watching the Ragin Ronin review. Got a review for you. Last night I saw Deadpool 2, and Deadpool 2 is of course the sequel to the 2016 surprise R-rated comic book movie hit Deadpool, which starred Ryan Reynolds as a title character and was directed by Tim Miller. And Deadpool was a huge surprise box office success. And I don't know if anybody saw that coming, but I really didn't expect an R-rated comic book movie to make so much money to the point where it ended up being the highest grossing R-rated film of all time. And it was such a fun film. I really enjoyed the very first Deadpool, and I couldn't wait for the next one. I was really excited to see where they're going to go with that. And looking back, we haven't seen an R-rated comic book movie since the Blade trilogy, which was like 15 to 20 years ago, depending on which installment, they had Blade Trinity that was also starring Ryan Reynolds. But anyways, we haven't seen an R-rated comic book movie film from Marvel for a very, very long time until Deadpool, where 20th Century Fox decided to take a risk, and after it was a success, they decided to take another risk with Logan, which ended up being another success. And now we have Deadpool 2, and later we're going to get X-Force. So I'm really excited about this change that is so welcome by the fans that 20th Century Fox decided to make by giving us these R-rated comic book movies. So that is really, really awesome. Anyways, I do have a review for you guys. And just like Avengers Infinity War, I decided that I'm going to change my format. I'm going to give you my expectations, and then after I finish watching the movie, I'm going to give you my reality. And that is how I really felt about the movie. So first, I'm going to give you my expectations. I already think I'm going to enjoy Deadpool 2 because I expect it to be just like the first one, but funnier because they're going to put more jokes. It's going to be bigger because they have a bigger production budget, and it's going to have much bigger action because they have director David Leitch on board, who directed John Wick and Atomic Blonde. So I'm actually really curious to see how his brand of action is going to translate into a Deadpool movie. So I'm already feeling that this one's going to be better than the first one. And I already really enjoyed the first one. The first one actually exceeded my expectations because I was expecting it to just be a smaller budget X-Men movie with Ryan Reynolds driving the movie with his jokes and his comedy. But I got so much more than that because I really, really enjoyed it. And they essentially translated the comic books into live action. And it just works so well. So Deadpool totally exceeded my expectations. And I think that Deadpool 2 is going to exceed my expectations again because I expect it to be funnier and bigger and have a lot of badass action. And I think that that's all it really needs to be great. And as long as Ryan Reynolds is constantly bombarding us with all kinds of hilarious jokes and one-liners, then you're going to have a really fun time. So those are my expectations for Deadpool 2. So now that I've seen Deadpool 2, I can easily and boldly tell you that it completely exceeded my expectations. This is one of those rare cases where the sequel is actually better than the already awesome original. The original will always be great, but this is even better. And I knew it was going to be funnier, which it is, and I also knew it was going to be more action-packed, which it ended up being. And I knew it was going to be a much bigger film because they had a bigger production budget. As a matter of fact, the first one I think only had like a $58 million production budget, and I was surprised at how much they were able to give us in terms of quality. And that was a quality film. That was a film that was true to the source material and was just a very satisfying and fun time, especially because they had such a great lead actor playing the title character, and it just worked so well, and it had a decent amount of action. Now this one was way more action driven, but they still don't forget about the story and the characters. That is, of course, most important thing, but it's just complemented so well by the amazing action. The action is just top notch and on another level. Of course, the success of this film is a combination of things. The writers, Paul Wernick and Rhett Reese, as well as, of course, Ryan Reynolds, who does such an excellent job playing the title character. It's kind of like how Hugh Jackman is Wolverine, Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man, Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth are Thor and Captain America, Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool, and he's so perfect because his line delivery just works every single time, and he's just so good at it. And of course, I gotta give major respect to David Leitch, who just came out of John Wick and Atomic Blonde, and when I heard that David Leitch was going to be the director. I was really excited because those films were really action-packed, and they were just like taking action to a whole other level. Like the combat in the film, physical combat in the film was just on another level. So I was thinking, okay, they're going to have like John Wick style, Atomic Blonde style action in Deadpool. That's going to be very interesting with wide angles and long takes. And it was actually not that. I was actually a little worried that the action in this film was going to be too Hong Kong style, because that's the way they shot John Wick and Atomic Blonde. But actually, the way they shot it with the director of photography as Jonathan Sela, they actually gave us a more aggressive style of shooting, which I really liked. The action choreography was so great, so well done. And you really feel the violent and gritty fighting when you're watching it. You feel the hits, the impact is really on point, and all the action is just so much fun to watch. It is awesome. And what's also great is that you remember how John Wick was it was an emotionally driven revenge rampage that John Wick was on? Well, it's kind of like this, where there's a really good blend of action and emotion, and this emotion was of course driven by Deadpool's character, Ryan Reynolds' character as Deadpool. There's an emotionally driven story, which they always remind us of throughout the story, so you don't lose sense of character and you're not overtaken by all the awesome action. You still feel that this is a character-driven story, which was absolutely perfect. So I really love this film. And also my expectations were exceeded by all the surprise cameos that ended up appearing. That was awesome. It made the film a lot more fun. So now that you know that the film totally exceeded my expectations, the film is still not perfect. Now I'd like to give you things that did work for me and things that I thought could use some improvement. I'm going to start with the comedy. While I really liked the comedy that had a lot of laugh out loud moments, there were actually a lot of moments from two specific characters that didn't really give me very many laughs, or sometimes none at all. I thought that Weasel, played by TJ Miller, is really not that funny. I didn't actually find them that funny in the first one. He was funnier in the first one, but this time he's just not as funny. A lot of jokes just weren't funny to me, and maybe that's just me. Another character that I thought was not funny at all, like whatsoever, was Dopinder's character. And Dopinder actually plays a huge part in the Deadpool story, but I found them funnier in the first one. Now with the evolution of his character, I just felt that none of his jokes work for me like at all. Like you could write off his entire character and it would still be the same movie, just because the comedy for his character is non-existent. So that's what didn't work for me. Now there are some specific character type things that also didn't work for me, and that is something that is a very common theme in all of the X-Men movies, and that is how mutants come and go. In the X-Men movies, the theme is that there are mutants everywhere. They're just everywhere, so you might see them in the background, they might have them briefly introduced, but then they'll just not appear again. And it's kind of like how they just have them as mutant cameos, because there's so many mutants in the X-Men comic book universe that they decided that they're just going to throw them in here and there. So they kind of do the same thing with that, but it just kind of teases you that in Deadpool 2, and then you're thinking, is that all we're going to see of this character? I would have liked to see more, but then again, they make up for it with more screen time for other characters. Now, the last thing that I felt could have been improved, now this is just a nitpicky thing, is that if they could make Deadpool look comic book accurate, why couldn't they make Domino and Cable look more comic book accurate in their costumes? I think I would have just preferred that. The characters are great, but I just would have preferred if they looked a little bit closer to the source material. But that's it. Now I'd like to share with you some things that did work for me. What really worked is that they really created a story which had more heart than the original. And like I said, it's a movie about family, and while it's really loosely based on the family theme, it's definitely a more emotionally driven film, and it totally worked. It also does a great job setting up the next movie, which is X-Force, so that was awesome. I think that a lot of fans already expected that, but they do a good job doing that. There are full of character surprises, and when I mean character surprises, I mean surprises having to do with characters. I don't want to spoil anything, but you'll know what I mean when I watch it. It's got a lot of character surprises, and if you are a fan of the source material or you're a fan of X-Men comics, you will definitely be very pleasantly surprised in what they decide to bring to the table for the sequel. I actually don't feel that the humor is forced. I read from some reviews that the humor is forced, but it's just Ryan Reynolds' delivery of the comedy that works so well. Like, you might think that the comedy is forced, you know, the jokes don't really work, but it's his delivery. It's Ryan Reynolds' delivery that really just makes it so much funnier. It's perfect. Like, I feel like if the same line could be delivered by a really great actor and it just wouldn't work. It's Ryan Reynolds' delivery that really makes the comedy work so well. There are a lot more hilarious sight gags. They really push the envelope with like the visual comedy. Like, it's a lot more like gruesome and more violent, and they really push the envelope in what they could do with this R rating. So that really worked well because it really makes you react to it. Domino was better than I thought because I've actually never heard of Zazie Beetz. I've never watched any of her previous work, and you know, when they decided to change the character by giving her a different appearance and the costume, I just felt like, okay, is this character really going to be that good? She was surprisingly good, and I love the clever way they wrote her in. Like, what she does as a superhero ability, like the way they wrote it into the action just worked perfectly. It was so clever, and it was just so brilliantly done, and I really loved it. That's just really clever writing. And Josh Brolin, while he didn't look like Cable, they made their version of Cable. Josh Brolin really worked well as Cable. Like, I take back what I said about the costume. I mean, sure, I would have preferred the costume, but Josh Brolin really works as Cable. Cable is supposed to be a lot bigger and taller. Josh Brolin, while he's bigger, he's not taller, but he still does a great job playing the character. Josh Brolin nailed the role as Cable. Even though the costume isn't right, Josh Brolin did a great job. Like, I loved what he brought to the character, and it worked. I loved the interactions, the chemistry he had with Deadpool. It was totally on point, and it was perfect. So that totally worked for me. And finally, the last thing I want to say that worked for me was the fourth wall breaking. You know, it's a gimmick that Deadpool uses in the comics. They brought that into the first film, and it totally worked, and I feel that it works even more because he pokes even more fun at himself, and he pokes even more fun at all the other things that he should really be poking fun at. Like, for example, like other comic book universes, like Marvel Cinematic Universe, DC Universe, you know, other films that he's made. You know, he pokes a lot of fun at all these things, and if you follow his works and all the history behind it all, it just works so well when he just looks at the camera and just makes a wisecrack, and it's just so funny. So that's awesome. Now, my overall thoughts about this movie is that if you love Deadpool, the original, you're gonna love this one. It's one of those sequels that is better than the first one, and this is definitely a must-see for comic book fans. If you are a comic book fan, if you've read Deadpool, and if you are an X-Men fan, you definitely need to watch this film. I give the original Deadpool an 8 out of 10. I'm gonna give this one a 9 out of 10. Sure, I have a bunch of nitpicky points about this film, but it still doesn't change the fact that this is an outstanding film. Completely exceeded my expectation. Bigger on comedy, bigger on action, and just a bigger film overall with great characters, like really well-written characters, and just a story with a lot of heart. That was great, and of course, if you are a comic book fan, you're gonna love all the surprises that they put in there, all the Easter eggs, all the cameos. It just makes for a really fun and funny experience overall. So there you have it, 9 out of 10. I highly recommend this film, and it's one of my top films of this year so far. So there you have it. Anyways, that's all I gotta say in this review. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, if you enjoyed this review, I hope you hit that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like me on Facebook, The Ragin Nation, also follow me on Twitter, Ragin Nation. My name is Alex. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.